Hi, Bother Brigade. Here's what's bothering me today. Once again, it is time for the Sunday sum up, and really, unfortunately, it's more like there was just a lot of news that happened on March 11th, but we're still going to kind of go throughout the week and cover some of the just absurd, random, and really frustrating stories from this past week. And I actually decided to cut a bunch of stuff relating to cops out of that because I feel like that could use its own proper video as a very grim and unfortunate but necessary reminder that all cops are bastards and generally tend to be on the side of fascists. But that's going to be a subject for a different time. So without further ado, welcome to the Sunday Sum Up. Here's how this rather ridiculous week started. Exclusive Ski Club received $1.4 million in federal COVID relief amid record year. Financial documents show Georgian Peaks paid $13,000 of income tax while opening new $13 million lodge. Yeah, so this company that had, again, a record year got $1.4 million in COVID relief money. Basically, our taxpayer money to give to them on top of an already record year. And notice that this big company paid just $13,000 in taxes. I think I know why the federal government never has money for funding social programs. Maybe you should start taxing these people making ridiculous amounts of profit or something. Also on March 7th was something that I saw. This could have been from a while ago, but it's just something that I saw on March 7th. Ordered pizza for my kids, and my daughter's math teacher is the person who delivered the pizza. This lady has a master's degree, makes less money than my dumbass, and has to deliver pizza to make ends meet. This ain't the American dream they keep trying to sell us. I mean, yeah, that's another topic for a whole other time, is the fact that teachers in America, but I mean even here in Canada as well, they aren't really paid enough given everything that they are asked to do and also tasked with doing, right? And so unfortunately, and this is especially true in America, teachers, because of like terrible bills being passed by state legislatures to make their work even more difficult, beyond that aspect, they also have lack of funding. So, you know, they have to pay for a lot of stuff out of pocket because they don't get enough funding. And then on top of that, because of this and the variety of other factors, they still, because of the rising cost of living and inflation and everything, they still need to make ends meet. And so, like, we've talked about this before, actually. There was a teacher who had to donate blood and plasma to help make ends meet. And she also had a second job on the side. And here's another teacher having a second job. Like, it's absolutely ludicrous and unreal. And we wonder why Americans seem to be so misinformed about so many things. Because the education system is objectively terrible. And no one's actually fixing it, when really the fixes are kind of there for all to see. Stop making teachers' jobs so incredibly difficult. Actually fund schools and programs to the level that they should be funded and adjust for inflation accordingly every goddamn year. And, you know, maybe instead of constantly increasing the military budget, start funding your education instead, because there have been several studies out that show that, you know, consistently making investments in education is the single best return on investment you can possibly make as a society. But unfortunately, we have people like this. I do not care about the environment. I just want cheap fuel and energy independence. Everyone we know will be dead in 100 years. Let the ones after us figure that shit out. Hashtag change my mind. So, that's, you know, some peak boomer ideology right there. And it also just shows how absolutely callous a lot of people have become over the many decades and years, to the point that they're saying, screw it, that's the future's problem. It's like, hey, do you have like families, children, grandchildren? Then you should care about the future in which they grow up in. Like, what? This lady is so shallow and vapid, just wanting cheap fuel and energy independence. Like that's all that's worthwhile in life. Like, go fuck yourself, lady. People like this are definitely to blame for the worsening of the situation and why it's taking forever to fight back against it and make it better, because her comfort is more important than your future survivability on the only planet we can live on. And so again, speaking on March 8th and talking about survivability and stuff, we've talked about this a bit with regards to Hawaii. I think we've covered it in like one video, but this also ties into another video we did about Hawaii and how tourism is very much a problem over there and it's impacting locals. And that's the focus of this story, is how several factors are impacting local Hawaiians. The state of Hawaii will continually drop all COVID restrictions right before a major American holiday, then reinstate it as soon as paying tourists are gone. It's nothing more than a tourism marketing tactic that puts money before lives. So far it's been done just before the 4th of July, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, etc. It's being done right now just in time to attract all the spring breakers, and it'll be done again just in time for the next major holiday, and on and on and on. If you don't believe this, ask yourself, why has tourism in Hawaii gone up exponentially since the start of the pandemic? Officials use this start of restrictions like retailers use last chance sales to clear out more stock than they would have sold normally. Come to restriction-free Hawaii now before the next spike. You may never get this chance again. In fact, the spikes that always occur after holidays are a plus for these assholes. It ensures that they can engineer the supply and demand of Hawaii to its buyers, American tourists. Do not dismiss the deeper issue here by calling these public officials dumb. They're cunning and they know exactly what they're doing. Their goal is not to save lives. Their goal is to make more money for themselves, and by that logic, they've done all they set out to do. When we call them dumb, we make it all the easier for them to play dumb while carrying out deadly policies with real, calculating intent. Call them what they are: deceitful, soulless, disgusting pigs who are very good at what they do. Sacrifice the people for their own gain. Which, again, see my previous video about tourism being a problem in Hawaii and how it's impacting locals. The second way this ties into locals is something that Silver Spook brings to attention on the regular. Oahu water protectors. They have left us to fend for ourselves. They have said our water is safe and unaffected. In the beginning, they told us our water was not on Navy water lines. Many of us trusted that and continued to use the water. We continued to be poisoned. We continued to get sick. That's in relation to the military. I think it's called Red Hill or something. It's a fuel storage area for the US military. It's leaked into the water supply in Oahu and poisoned and affected hundreds of local Hawaiians. However, recently, Board of Water Supply puts out urgent call for voluntary water conservation on Oahu. And again, as Silver Spook rightfully points out about why it's a 10% thing and where that 10% is kind of going to actually. Unnecessary golf courses, many of which are US military operated, are taking nearly 10% of Hawaii's water. The average person in Hawaii is of course being asked to conserve, rather than the wealthy and the military industrial complex that caused this catastrophic water crisis. So in short, the state and the military complex in Hawaii have lied to locals, allowing them to be poisoned, refusing to take responsibility for it, while also stealing needed water for the locals for their own weird selfish purposes for golf courses and bullshit like that. Meanwhile, local Hawaiians have to suffer under, we gotta make money because of tourism and everything. So they are forced to ration water so that tourists can also get fresh water because they're more important than the actual locals on Hawaii, while they again are being forced to deal with outbreak after outbreak because again, for the name of tourism and money. It's an absolutely fucked up situation, and nearly no one except Hawaiians are talking about it. So yeah, then we reach about the midweek point, and then we get to March 11th, and let's just say it started with an interesting observation. A gallon of gas is now officially more expensive than an hour of minimum wage labor. This timeline is so fucked. Now, I know gas prices are fluctuating. A lot of people said recently they've dropped by about 10 cents. Still pretty ridiculous given everything. And again, it's not because of dumb reasons like the carbon tax. It's because of corporate greed. A lot of these companies have had banger years in terms of profitability. And again, related to that first point we talked about, they pay next to nothing in taxes. Oh, and while this is technically an older story, I actually only saw it earlier this week, which was a very interesting observation about, again, how the oil and gas sector views anyone who's not them. Biden must push back on Mexican President AMLO's energy imperialism. Yes, because when Mexico refines its own oil, that's energy imperialism. Don't you know you gotta do the Canadian thing and send your oil to Texas so that Americans can profit off of energy and they can become energy independent and be able to pay theoretically lower prices for it. If Canada or Mexico were to do that, oh, that's very bad. That's energy imperialism, don't you know? But hey, that wasn't the only stupid political story that I saw earlier in the week. Also on March 11th, we saw that democracy well and truly doesn't matter, especially in the heart of the American empire, the District of Columbia. Congress overrides DC voters, keeps sales of marijuana illegal in district. So the people of DC voted overwhelmingly to legalize marijuana. And yet Congress, because Congress gets the final say on what happens in DC, they said, nope, not allowing that. That's very bad of you. How dare you exercise free will and hope to accomplish it democratically. Oh, and Congress also authorized a further police budget increase to the Capitol Police, but that's going to be a subject for another time when we delve into ACAB once again. And like I said, March 11th was a bit of a doozy, and you know how just a couple days ago at this point we talked about the terrible numbers going on in Hong Kong with the COVID outbreak and how it seems like the BA2 variant is really wreaking havoc, and how unfortunately Hong Kong really kind of had a handle on it until this happened? Well, here's what's happening right now. That is a hospital room with patients surrounded by people in body bags, because the situation is just that dire. Bodies next to patients on a ward at Hong Kong's Queen Elizabeth Hospital, 2 years into the pandemic. We don't want to learn. Now, I kind of take issue with that last line, because over in China where this was happening, they did learn. It's why they were doing the whole zero tolerance approach and doing mass testing and contact tracing, allowing for isolation, lockdowns if need be. They were really mobilizing to fight back against that. So I kind of take issue with that. But it is true that we in the West haven't learned. And so unfortunately, this may be something we get to look forward to, say in April and May. You know, just in time for spring and everything, after we've lifted all the mandates. Oh, and speaking of the West, here in Canada, one of our biggest, most famous, and like prestigious, if you want to call it that, universities is McGill University. Recently, however, there's been what amounts to a protest/occupation going on, as students are calling for them to divest investments in like the pension plan that like faculty have and stuff like that, away from several things. Most notably, it's part of the boycott, divest, and sanction movement trying to target Israel and their occupation of Palestinian land. But it's also about, hey, maybe we shouldn't support war crimes and like terrible, awful things that are ruining the planet, the environment, and other countries, that kind of stuff. So this became known as Divest McGill/Occupy McGill, where they've actually just occupied parts of buildings. And so this is where the interesting tactics have come out. Students in the Divest McGill #Occupy McGill space are being tormented with an excruciating, high-pitched, loud siren noise in the space through loudspeakers close to classrooms and offices. Attempts at resolution have been shut down. McGill, we will not be intimidated. So rather than meet with students and listen to their demands and like try and work something out, they're instead using sonic warfare, basically. So just in case you needed any more reminders that Canada is not a socialist paradise or a utopia, in fact, it's a neoliberal nightmare state, here's yet another feather in your cap for that. So that was all the horrifying stuff on March 11th, and there wasn't as much on March 12th, but still some pretty disturbing stuff, such as this weird and bizarre nugget from Japan. Japanese schools have banned ponytails, claiming they could sexually excite boys. Yeah, because apparently, and like, you know, links provided for everything down below, but apparently the idea was, oh, if young boys see the nape of their neck, that could sexually excite them. And the ponytail swishing in the breeze, that can sexually excite people. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with people? Like, it's like that same thing that we saw in America a while ago. Like, oh no, you know, a girl's showing her shoulders, so we gotta like digitally edit her photo to cover it up. It's like, how horny for children are you people? This is ridiculous. Oh, ponytails. Oh, shoulders. Thighs. Like, what? Is this like Victorian England all of a sudden? Like, what the actual fuck is wrong with people? Maybe, you know, the actual root cause of the problem of predation on children should be addressed and solved rather than, you know, banning a hairstyle, because that doesn't address the goddamn problem that they're pretending to care about by doing stuff like this. But unfortunately, speaking of schools, that is video of the Western High clashes in Florida between the Don't Say Gay, like, protest walkout and people who are supporting Trump and like the right wing and the push for all this. It's basically like a horrifying situation where fights now are breaking out at schools because of right-wing agitation. As Rico Rance beautifully sums up, conservatives turning schools into culture war battlegrounds all to gain power is just so fucked up. These kids shouldn't have to go through this. Yeah, kids should not have to be doing so much of this fighting for their own goddamn safety and health and sanity. It's absolutely infuriating, and it's happening all over the place. Not just Florida, not just Texas. It's happening everywhere. And as people will tell you who are working with at-risk youth, it is having a massive impact on their mental health and their outlook for the future. What happened to all those pro-life people talking about every life matters, children matter, we gotta protect the children? Cool, I expect your condemnation of stuff like this and to push back against it any fucking day now. And that wasn't the only sad and unfortunate fight that was breaking out on March 12th.
No, you assaulted me. Alex, drop it.
That was a gender-critical, quote, activist physically attacking a trans woman at a protest in Britain. It's just more proof that the GC and TERF crowd are fundamentally fascist. In fact, Harker the Storyteller and Caelan Conrad, who are both friends of the channel, have fantastic videos on that, by the way, and links for those will be in the description down below. They are good videos. I highly encourage everyone to watch them and also go and subscribe to their channels. They are doing great work. Like, their video production quality is way better than mine will ever be. And then that brings us to today, and I mean, take your pick for today. You want to talk about horribleness going on in Ukraine, more terrible ACAB stuff, but we're going to save that for a different time. But really, that was a week in review of other stuff that has been happening that is just showing the worsening of society, and that all the fundamental problems from a century ago are still with us today. Colonialism in Hawaii, exploitation of people, not actually listening or working with students and those demanding better change, the targeting of minorities and LGBT youth. Like, the problems persist. And yes, we have made positive strides away from the dark times, but it's still a massive mountain that needs to be climbed. And unfortunately, the people in power aren't making it any easier to fight the good fight. And that is what's bothering me today.